A little snapshot of sites from around 1999. All right, so thanks for coming. We are here to talk about how long websites last and when it is time to redesign. Briefly about myself, I'm Dan Moriarty. I'm on Twitter at minneapolisdan. I'm a creative director and founder of Electric Citizen, currently largely working on strategic planning and UX design for our clients. And I built my first website around 1998. Electric Citizen, we're a Minneapolis-based digital agency. We're on Twitter at ELECitizen, electriccitizen.com. We do strategy, planning, design, development, and support. We specialize in the civic sector, working with Drupal and clients such as the University of Minnesota, Century College, Viterbo University, City of Bloomington, and the Swedish Institute. So today, what are we going to discuss? What to expect for your website's lifespan, signs that your site is nearing the end, when to rebuild versus realign, and ways to keep your site alive and kicking. Because the overall lesson here is that your sites shouldn't last forever, as is, unless you're the original Space Jam website, which is still running untouched since 1996. Maybe it'll change here when the new LeBron James Space Jam movie comes out. I don't know when that is, but I've heard it's in the works. All right, so how long do websites last? Let's start with point one, and the conceit that tech does not last. All good things must pass, including the beloved floppy disk, unless you're the U.S. military who still uses it for our nuclear weapons program. Let's consider the smartphone for a good analogy about this. So I'm assuming this is most or all of you, but so raise your hand if you have a smartphone, please, and keep it up. And if you keep your hand up if it's older than 1 year. So older than 2 years. Older than 3. Carrie's going to be my outlier. Anyone older than 2011, 5 years old. Okay, so, and that's fine. You know, the point is that if you do have an older smartphone, what is your user experience with it? Why do people keep bothering to upgrade over and over again? And I think some of the general reasons you could agree on is that things get slower. Your apps don't load as quickly. The latest update for some of your favorite apps no longer works on that version of your smartphone. Things crash. Batteries start wearing out. At one point, people upgraded because they wanted a smaller and smaller phone, and now we're upgrading because we want a bigger and bigger phone. And you want better features. The newer smartphones have awesome cameras, better in low light. They have waterproof features in case you drop them in the toilet. And new features like fingerprint recognition, and that really comes in handy for payment options and just ease of use in different transactions. And you don't have to upgrade a phone, but at some point you start to get left behind. And the reason is because your expectations shift as much as anything. Expectations about technology and what was acceptable before to you is no longer okay. And these kind of things include the UI of your device, the performance of your device, the features of your device, and the appearance. And so what does this have to do with your website? Well, the analogy I'm drawing here is between the two is that your website is technology too. And what was new 3 years ago or longer can seem dated and slow today. And not only that, but beyond technology, a website is also these other things: content, brand, design, users, the device. It means it's even easier to fall behind and harder to keep up. So let's explore the lifespan of a modern website and how to keep yours from dying or simply existing like a zombie online. And just for the very last point about this, thinking about it as a smartphone, if you think about your current website that you're in charge of, would you compare it to a brand new iPhone 6? Not to be too much of an iPhone fanboy, but or would you think of it more as a flip phone, which wouldn't have been out of place 5 years ago? And think about what best serves the needs of your audience and what offers the best user experience. And ask yourself, would you hand your customer, your audience, a mobile phone from 2011 and tell them to buy something online? It'd be pretty hard to use Skype or Twitter or Facebook or take a video and post it to YouTube. And not only that, would you work with a 5-year-old mobile device and expect the same great user experience as a new iPhone or Android? Probably not, but how many people continue to do this with their websites? They have a 5-6-year-old website and they can't figure out why it can't do this great new thing. Well, unfortunately, things move fast and times are changing. So let's do another quick poll, if you don't mind. I'm just curious, in the room, people that build sites for other clients, vendors or web designers. And I'm curious, of all the sites you've built or managed, what's the oldest site that is still running that you built, unchanged? Does anyone have a good anecdote or story about that?
We have one that's at least 6 or 7 years old.
Okay.
It looks old.
Right. I can tell you a little a story about a site I built for a client in 2002, PHP-based, very rudimentary custom CMS, still running today, unchanged. And much to my chagrin, I really can't believe it, but that happens.
I have a couple that are over 12 years.
12 years old? Yeah. Yeah, and in one sense, yeah, it still does the basic functionality of you can click a link and read some text, but I'm not sure it's the greatest user experience at this point. Not to mention it's probably horribly insecure and prone to crashing and does not work on mobile, etc. So for everyone else that that, well, pretty much everyone here that works at a company, an organization, when was the last redesign of your website? Do you know anyone in the past year? Raise your hand.
Huh?
How about the last 2 years? Yeah, 3, 5 or 6. Okay, good. Because hopefully I'll be able to help give you some ideas. Anyone not sure at all when the last time your site was last done? Possible. Okay. Well, the lesson here is you're on the clock. From the time your site first launches, you are on the clock. And what's new, as we know, is soon old. Cutting edge features and functionality. You got a question?
Well, I was just curious on your last section of hand raising, how many people fell into 2 of those time categories? Like redesign within the first year, and then also 3 to 4 years to the redesign as well.
Sure. And that's your...
Yeah, definitely, because we just did a redesign, but that site was redesigned, I think, last 2.5 years ago, maybe.
Okay.
So.
All right. Well, we'll get into kind of those patterns and see how common that is. So cutting edge features that were awesome 3 to 4 years ago, only 3 to 4 years ago, can now seem clunky and hard to use. And why? Because expectations change as a customer, audience of your site, and for your editors of your site. So just think about some of the things that have changed for websites just in the past few years. We've got responsive design that really hasn't been around that long. There's still many sites out there that don't have that. And this whole idea of mobile first, maybe you jumped in a year or 2 ago and said, oh, we got to make sure our website can adjust to an iPhone or smartphone or a tablet. Well, that doesn't mean that you built the thing mobile first with your mobile audience as your primary concern. And the reason you do that is so that everyone gets a great experience instead of just a hampered, smaller, cut-down version of a desktop site. We saw the end of Flash. I don't know what the official date was, but I know that was in the past few years. Moved towards flat design, away from making buttons on your site that look like buttons or tabs that look like folder tabs with the gradients and drop shadows and all that. We moved to full screen images, background videos and images. We embraced SAS and less and other dynamic style sheet approaches. Accessibility isn't really what's changed, but the focus is increasing and the scrutiny is increasing, so it's something we need to be more and more aware of. Content written for the web, usability, trends towards larger type is one of my favorites. I don't know if it's because it coincides with me getting older, but the days when everyone built a site and the first thing you did was shrink that default browser text down to 13 points and make it as tiny and hard to read as possible. And now we're actually going the opposite direction, which I think is great. Let's make it easy to see what you need to do. CMS-powered sites, still plenty of people out there running static, non-CMS sites, and that's probably becoming more and more rare. All the new JavaScript libraries out there, like Angular and React. Search engine algorithms continue to change. You get penalized if your site is not mobile friendly these days in the rankings. Social media integration. Anything else big that I'm kind of forgetting in the past few years? Probably something.
HTML5 video.
HTML5, yep, that's a big one. All right, so we know that tech changes, and we've looked at changes to these previous bullet points that have a lot to do with site code and how your site is built and how you should respond, and can you make changes to your site incrementally? It really depends on how far behind you are. So in some ways, it's just like repairing a car. This is a question I'm asking myself these days. At some point, do I want to keep putting repairs onto my current car, or do I just want to bite the bullet and get a new one?
Get a new one, it's worth it.
I agree. Trying to be frugal. So, and then of course, if you're making a switch to Drupal or another CMS, or you, well, since we're at Drupal camp, I don't have to say that, but switching to Drupal, or you're embracing the dynamic CSS changes, or going with a mobile-first approach, those are all pretty major changes, and you probably want to just consider a full rebuild at that point. So tech changes, is that all? No. So there's also, as we said, websites are more than just HTML. They are your user interface, the design, the content, the performance, the end users, the devices. So these are other things we need to consider, like design. Well, I just said these: design, content, user, device. So let's talk briefly about design changes. When you think of design updates for a website, what sort of things come to mind?
Flat design.
Flat designing. Usually I hear like changes of color schemes or layouts or
Changes in screen sizes.
screen sizes.
The new ability to do CSS typography.
CSS type.
Used to make graphics for.
Yeah, that was a big change we used to make, and now we have all these great web fonts. Let's start using them more and more. So yeah, looks and feel, graphics, video. We're using video embedded in the page more. Following the latest trends, and when you think of following the latest trends, you might think, like, why should I have to do that? You know, it's just going to be outdated another 3 or 4 years down the road, and I'll have to do this again. But I think the compelling reason is that your job as an organization is to offer some service that your customers or clients feel confident about using, whatever it is that you're offering. And they need to trust you and know you're competent, and they care about you and how you look, and that you're professional. And showing up in the equivalent of a pair of parachute pants from 1984 isn't going to work, usually. You have to put your best foot forward, and as much as we like to say appearances don't matter in day-to-day life, I'd like to think that, but in the web world, in professional business world, they do matter. So even if a casual or off-the-wall look is appropriate for your organization, that doesn't mean you don't need to change. Content changes. We heard about this yesterday, but is your content written for mobile users? I don't want to see 8 paragraphs of text on a page. It sounds lazy, but it's just the way that people consume the web. You know, you want to chunk your content, keeping it short and to the point. I have this much real estate for my site. I can't have 20 different messages. I can have more down here as I swipe, but up here I need to know what's the primary point of this page. What do I need to do here? Making sure users can find the content they're looking for. Some of the other, the user interface patterns for presenting content, like putting it in accordions or off-screen navigation, these are affecting the way content's presented. And you need to look at analytics and do your user testing and adjust your site navigation and search to react to that and make sure your copy's effective. So user changes. Consumers and editors of websites both have expectations that have changed over time for what a website should do and how it's managed. One of the first big changes with the CMS that was so great, hey, you don't have to know HTML to edit this page. Now, if you go to a website and you don't have that ability, it's not a feature anymore. It's your expectation, and you'd be very disappointed not to see that, which is why Drupal 8 finally includes one by default, even though you could always install one. That was a turnoff for a lot of new people. Loading and editing images online is rapidly becoming, it's the expectation that your CMS can do this. Editing the images, cropping it, that's not necessarily the expectation, but I would think it's getting there. Editing website content online, which is the new expectation with CMSs, but editing it on a mobile device, even though that's maybe not the best experience, is what someone would expect. I would expect I can edit my Drupal site on a mobile phone, and that's some of the changes that Drupal 8 brought about, and some changes to some admin themes if you don't use them on Drupal 7, so you can do this if you have to in a pinch. The next big expectation, which we've been seeing some promise of, is editing content in line right on the page, right? And you don't have to click edit and wait for the page to refresh and you go to your WYSIWYG field and you find the piece of content you want to edit. You'll just go to your web page. Oh, I want to edit this header. Click. The editor pops right up. You just change it. Maybe you just drag something to another column. This is with no page refresh, right? And this is not the normal pattern today, but this is going to be expected very soon, and Drupal better be ready for it. And I know there's some smart minds working on that, and that's what I really want to see too. And personalization of site content. People want to see content that relates to them. They want to see related stories that might relate to the navigation, the way they got to this page, rather than just a random offering. And then device changes. You know, we all know monitors now are so many different sizes, so we can't expect a defined pattern, but and we know it needs to work at any size. That's the expectation. So make sure that your website does that, because if I pull up a site on a tablet or phone and it doesn't adjust at this point, it really upsets my expectations for that website experience. People expect it to be quick and fast, and that's not always the case with websites, especially when we start loading a lot of videos and graphics. So that's something we have to make sure we are meeting those expectations. People have location-aware devices. So if I'm looking for the latest class that this website organization offers, I expect that it'll just say, hey, can I use your current location, instead of making me type in my address and zip code. These are new expectations. We have touch-sensitive devices that I'm not sure yet what the expectations will be for websites with that, but I'm sure that'll have an effect. So ask yourself, for your website and your organization, have you kept up with all these changes to tech, design, to content, to user and devices? It's a lot to keep up with, but if you're not, you may not be meeting your users' expectations. And if that's the case, it's time to rebuild. Am I, just ask real quick, are you guys tracking this pretty good so far? Am I doing clear? Okay. Yeah. Lots of, I don't have donuts, so I just have to rely on charm. All right, so is your website a teardown or a fixer-upper? What do you think is the number in years when you need to rebuild your site? I get any kind of feedback from the audience? Every X number of years or months?
3
Months.
Kidding, years.
3 weeks, yeah.
A rebuild and then a refresh.
Yes. 3. Okay. So 3 years, and that's about what the perceived norm is these days. So you guys are right on about that. Many people saying you should do this every 2 to 3 years. There was this research, for what it's worth, on this link on HubSpot, where they interviewed 6,000 different marketing firms and asked them how often they are rebuilding their sites, and that was the number they came up with, which was around 18 to 24 months. Yeah.
Well, I'm wondering, for different sectors, it may not matter as much.
Absolutely.
Some of our clients, don't need a new website. Like their client, they aren't marketing themselves on the website with marketing information.
Yeah, it's a good point, because they are talking to marketing firms who are much more image conscious than everyone else. However, when we see just the amount of sheer changes coming down in the past few years, I think you can make the argument that everyone, if you want to meet those client user expectations, need to consider frequent redesigns. Because the thing about all the changes just in the past 2 years, for example, mobile users jumped from 10% to 25% of all web traffic. So I think I've been saying to clients for a while, your audience is gradually going to be majority mobile users, and for a lot of industries that's already the case. Maybe not everyone, but it certainly is happening fast. And who knows what will happen in another 2 or 3 years. It'll be, how does your website look on your watch, right? But there's no magic number for when it's time. You know, you don't redesign just because it's been 3 years. You know, you don't have to put that on your calendar and say, oh, it's time. You know, it depends on how well you've cared for it over those 3 years and what you're trying to achieve. And just ask yourself, is the site no longer serving your audience the best it could, and the path to improvement is long? It's time to redesign. So part of that process is making sure you schedule regular check-ins with your website team, with your organization, whoever has a stake in the site, including your audience, maybe get some feedback, and keep tabs on how it's doing. Because we remember that user expectations are shifting, and what was acceptable before is no longer okay, like the UI, performance, features, and appearance and content. And as this person, I think I got this off of Smashing Mag, don't redesign just to do something new, redesign because you have a better answer to the question, whatever it is your website is trying to achieve or problems you're solving. But a quick list of when to redesign: obvious problems with site functionality, not responsive, site is loading slowly, you know, your performance, you can't easily add that new functionality you want to. Editors can't easily manage site content if your traffic's down. Pages are getting cluttered. You can generally tell how old the site is by how many things you see on the homepage. Compares poorly to your competitors. You know, everybody has somebody they're maybe not competing in the business sense, but you have peers, business peers. Your branding or your purpose has changed. It's a bad user experience. Or this last point, which I'll explore briefly in the next slide, is that the tech or UX debt list is long. And so I like this concept of technical debt. It seems to apply to a lot of people, and I'll just read the quote here quickly, that over the course of building up a website, an organization begins to accrue tech and UX debt. And that's made up of all the things you should have done during the initial build, but didn't get around to, or had to cut corners in order to ship on time. And then each subsequent iteration adds more debt to the list. So how many people have built a website and then used the phrase phase 2? Pretty sure everybody. Phase 3, maybe. I even give the name of a company if you want to use that. So your website gets to the point where starting over would be cheaper than fixing all the items on your debt list. Planning your site redesign. Just briefly, some of the points you want to keep in mind. You want to make sure you sit down and define or reconsider the purpose of your site. You want to study analytics, see how people are using it. You want to do a website audit of your key pages of your site and your content. You want to study comparable sites. Look at your sitemap, your navigation. Is it working effectively? How does it match with analytics and what people are using your site for? Is it user-friendly? You can do some user testing, create some wireframes to examine the hierarchy of your content on the page, and if you're getting your key messages in the right areas and the secondary messages are established in a very easy to understand visual hierarchy. You can do some user surveys and user testing. The point is, don't just redesign. Think about what you need to do and go through this nice planning phase beforehand. You'll find it's much more strategic, and you'll be able to track your results. So one example I liked here was the New York Times redesign. This was 2 years ago, but I think it's still something that we can look at here. When they did this, they said they hope to never do this again, at least on the same scale. This is the last full redesign and rebuild we'll do, which probably isn't true, but it was interesting perspective. This quote, "We've completely replatformed the whole back-end technology system so that we can get out of the business of doing redesigns." And it's a good goal, and I think it's not really saying they'll never adjust their site, but they said, okay, this thing has been built over the past 7 years, and there's so much technical debt, and different competing interests over time that just pile on top of each other to get to the point, let's just clean house and start building from square one. And you can still learn about it. There's a nice little informative, stylish site at this nytimes.com redesign. And some of the changes that they did that I think are still very applicable today, well, they moved to a new CMS. I don't think it was Drupal. It's probably some giant custom thing, but that was one of their major changes. They went with cleaner pages. They got rid of sidebars and headers on their articles. It's one of the things that I've been advocating where possible on sites, because as everyone knows, when you look at a website on your smartphone, where does that sidebar go, right? It a lot of times ends up down here, or maybe it can be pushed off to the side and pulled in when you need it, but these are the kind of things you consider. Maybe that whole pattern of column designs needs to go away. So they got rid of pagination on their articles. Let's not make users click and go to 7 different pages to read the whole article. People wanted to swipe down and read the whole piece, right? Optimized for smartphones. Options to view larger media. You can click on an image, view it larger. The video you can expand to a larger screen. And a new approach to browsing. They really key in on this whole idea of related content, and I think that's an expectation and a trend that you should embrace on your sites. Is I'm reading this piece of content, I'm not going to necessarily go back to your navigation and peck down to the next thing I want to read. Just give me something to work with here. So they do. They give you 3 different options. I'm reading an article, and they've got this nice ribbon at the top that you can swipe through, showing you not only related content to that story, but it's also based on how you click into the story. So whatever path you followed, if you went from sports to basketball to the New York Knicks, it may not just be like, here's another Knicks article, but like, hey, you might like this other sports-related topic. So it's a bit of a personalization to it. Related content links next to each story. And another arrow to the right of each page if you just want to not really think about it, but just click, show me another story. So some of the other patterns that you can see here is they couldn't have introduced, there we go. They couldn't have introduced these changes without a full redesign. This little graphic on the side isn't animating right now, but it just was showing how with comments you click and you get a little slider that pops in on the side. It reduces the visual clutter for those who don't want to see the comments. For those who do, it pulls it in. So they did this all to provide a great user experience and taking into account patterns in UX and UI design that didn't exist before, and embracing those. The related content, the no sidebars, the full screen media, off-screen content, and collapsed menus. When I'm looking at an article, I don't see the full navigation menu. I might just see the little hamburger thing, and that reveals more menu options. And it's just to keep you focused on the content that they want to deliver. They want you to have a good user experience. It's part of their brand. It's part of building customer loyalty, right? Because at its core, a website is a communication tool, and if it's difficult for users to communicate with your brand digitally, you're going to lose sales or you're going to lose audience. So that's fine, that's redesign, but is there a reason to not rebuild? Well, number one, completely rebuilding your site is a disruptive experience for users, or it can be. It's going to be in some ways, but it can be either a minor one or just a complete annoying mess. So people don't always like change, right? They may react negatively. As Jacob Nielsen says, maybe he's a bit of a curmudgeon, but he says, users hate change, so it's usually best to stay with a familiar design and evolve it gradually. So this is an argument for a different approach that users don't care about design for its own sake. They just want to get things done and get out. I don't think that's well, I do think design makes a big impression, but I do get his point here. So other reasons is that your search engine rank can suffer if you're not careful when you do the full rebuild. You can lose valuable links that were indexed by the search engines. Users can't find what they need. They get frustrated. And probably the biggest reason is it's expensive and it's a lot of effing work to rebuild. So that's a good reason not to. So what else do you do then? Well, you can try this thing called realignment. And the reason that you might want to consider realigning is the fact is you just don't know what works until you try it. You know, you can do your best diligent work and plan everything out with your website, but once it's launched, that's when you really find out how it's going to work. And you need to be ready to adjust to that. You can't just roll it out, the big reveal, and then go take a, well, you can take a little vacation, but then you can't you can't just say, oh, I'm done, I've solved all my user problems and there's nothing left to do. You know, it's really a case of iterating on what you've just done, adjusting to feedback and analytics, maybe do some A/B testing, because you can't always predict what design or headline or copy will perform best. You can try with some user testing, but ultimately it's a experiment in the wild to see how it works. And sometimes small, simple fixes can accomplish far more than an expensive redesign, and they're certainly faster to roll out, right? So I just want to introduce this new feature. I want to adjust my sub-navigation in this section of the site because people aren't finding it. Hey, do a quick realignment project instead of a rebuild. You know, I think Amazon is a good example of iterating. If you notice the little slideshow at the beginning of this, it really didn't look that different than it does today, and that was a 2004 screenshot. So I think they're constantly tweaking their site. I wouldn't say it's a award-winning design type site, but they are taking a very strong approach to iterating. And I think actually Apple does that as well, even though those early screenshots look a bit harsh today. They really are keeping to the same format for quite a few years with just tweaking it. So try fine-tuning. You know, most website owners don't know how to diagnose, much less solve, the problems of a large, complex site. And without proper diagnostics, any resulting improvements to the user experience will be almost accidental. So you don't have to solve everything. You could look at just a small portion of your website content. Maybe that does 80% of the work on your site. Focus on that area. The stuff that people actually need. You know, many people we have like 5 or 6 audiences that we're trying to address at the website. But the truth is, one of those audiences or 2 are way more important than the rest. And you know, let's just really focus some time on those key audiences and see what we can adjust to make it better, and prioritize your efforts on just a few key problems. I'm going to skip this next slide for time. I'm missing an image there. So when does redesign, when is it better than realigning? Because we've seen the 2 approaches, and again, our old friend Jacob Nielsen has some good quotes here I want to share with you. One, I'll try to summarize, is that if you don't really have a lot of users and you have a lot to gain from this redesign to try and increase the users, hey, give it a shot, right? Maybe there's not as much to lose as if you've got a big audience, but remember the old adage that a handful of users in your hand are worth more than a ton of users in the bush. The other reason is if your old design is incrementally involved for so many years that the user experience has become so convoluted and lost any kind of unified structure, that's another good reason to redesign. And one of the examples he gave was Microsoft Office, which began in, was it 94 or something? It was around for 17 years before Microsoft Office 2003 came around. And over those 17 years, they just kept piling on features, piling on different UI layouts, buttons, and so it got to the point where there was no unity to the thing. You know, it lacked that cohesive structure, and that's the kind of thing that can happen to your website over time. When that's a good reason to look at the full redesign rather than okay, these tweaks have been working, but now it's time to scale it back and do a single redesign that brings it all together. But it's really not an either or. Despite the clear benefits of realignment, knowing when to redesign versus realign often comes down to cost. Is it cheaper to start over? Inability to change or adapt within your current code base is a good reason, or your technical debt is too large. Because what the key to remember is that websites are never done. You know, at launch time, no one knows for certain what the best approach is. We just need to estimate and try. We need to iterate, observe, adjust, and try again, right? Lastly, point 4, how to stay alive and escape the Walking Dead. Does anyone know what that is up there? Any guesses?
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Glenn.
Glenn.
Yeah, there we go.
With a dumb string.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know spoilers there, but that was an odd scene, in my opinion. All right, so signs your site is dying. We've got about 20 minutes left, so I think we're on good track here. Hopefully I'm keeping you all very stimulated on this Saturday morning. Traffic is down. Audience participation is down. Lack of updates to dynamic content. You have a blog that hasn't been updated in 8 months. You have a news feed that has a story from 2015 as the most recent entry. Or it doesn't work on the new devices or adapt to new features. And remember, if your site is out of date, security patches have been applied to Drupal, you're running an old version of Drupal, or you've got a bunch of modules that are way out of date, or you're running Drupal 6 and it's really no longer supported. Well, unfortunately, your site is dying and needs some help. And of course, the main point I'm driving home today is that it's failing to meet these changing expectations of your audience. So get busy living or get busy dying. Websites that aren't continually updated or maintained are dead or dying. And it doesn't matter if it's a timeless content or timeless design. Something's changing and you need to react to it. And it does not simply mean add a different news story or slider in the homepage. It means planning what you're going to do, carefully executing regular updates. So the sad news is that your work is never done. Your website should be a living, breathing, changing being. Edit and improve constantly. Who here feels that they're kind of hitting that mark? Anyone? This guy. Good work. And is this for your organization's website or?
No, we have I'm in the middle of the beginning parts of a project right now for a client where they're on Symfony 2.3, which I think it's end of life at this point. I think it's got a year's worth of security patches coming up for it, but we are over the next 6 months going to be moving their backend to Drupal 8. But as far as your list on the previous slide, though, everything is still checking off on all the points except for the last one. Their framework is fairly new. It's technology that's behind the times, but it's still meeting their conversion metrics, and the front end of the site is still performing the way it needs to.
Yeah, and that's good. Because they're paying a lot of attention to their site, right? They're giving it lots of time and love, or
they might just be lucky. The design was good to start off with, though. So it was a pretty forward-thinking site 3 years ago. It's still fairly current in terms of what it does and the issues that it addresses. It just is a poor framework. It's got a lot of technical debt.
Yeah. Okay, so that's good, right? There's these different metrics that you're looking at, and some of them you might be hitting, and some of them you may not. So perhaps in that case, a realignment is all they need. So redesigns, remember, are not the same as site maintenance. Routine updating is something all sites require, and you do have to plan for both. To live the good life, budget time in your life for constant site updates. Pay attention to your users and analytics. Pay attention to what your competitors or benchmarks are doing. Keep up with trends of technology as you can in design and how people are consuming the web. And keep your code up to date. Continuous improvement. That's the goal, right? You don't build it, the big reveal, and then it sits on a pedestal for 3 years and nothing else happens. It's something you've got to keep tinkering at to do your best for your audience. It's budgeting. You got to budget time and money for continuous improvement to your website. People budget money for the big redesign, but are you budgeting for that continuous improvement? Are you budgeting for analytics, either time or money, right? It's either you or someone else, to monitor site speeds, monitor site security, to check on your traffic and how your content is doing. And on top of that, set aside a little fund for these periodic redesigns, preferably to specific areas of your site rather than a full scrap and rebuild. But sometimes, as we saw, that's really the only way. So in conclusion, expectations are constantly shifting in what we think of as a good user experience with a website. You'll need continuous education, you got continuous attention, and you got to budget for it and plan for continuous improvement. Realign early and often, keep track of what's working, and not just through periodic, through periodic checkups. Like I said, schedule on your calendar with your web team. Hey, let's sit down, it's been 3 months, it's been 6 months, let's see what's working, what's not. Just like you would have these meetings during the redesign process. You know, schedule these kind of things. Just like getting your checkup at the doctor, which probably doesn't happen every 3 months, probably every 5 years or something. Decide if a full rebuild would be more effective than realignment. Is this a car that's worth repairing, or should you just get a new one? Keep your site alive and plan to eventually replace it. When you replace it depends on how well you've cared for it and what you're trying to achieve. That's it. Questions?
My challenge is talking to my customers about this kind of thing. And you've done a really nice job of, kind of explaining why a person needs to redesign. When I talk to my customers about this, they just look at me like, what? This idea that we're going to have to keep budgeting to update the site. We're going to have to, this site's only going to be good for a couple of years is the first thing that a lot of us not there.
Yeah. It's they say, well, it's still working just like we planned. So what's the problem?
Right.
Well, maybe there isn't one, but there's probably something you could at least put some time into improving. Because when we launched it, you didn't know for sure what was going to work best, and the chances are, there's something that, and not only that, but you run a CMS like Drupal, you got to update it regularly. You don't want to wait and do, 300 updates all at once and cross your fingers and hope nothing breaks on the side. Yes.
Yeah, I have a few clients, actually several, who they just really love their sites, and the sites are getting old, and I do keep the modules and everything updated, but I have one client where I know that they are open to spending a little bit of money on it, so every now and then I'll say to them, hey, you know what, I think I have a way that's going to make it a little easier for you to edit your content. Is it okay if I go ahead and spend a few hours on that, that sort of thing. But I have others where they think their site's perfect, which is wonderful. I mean, I'm so glad they like them, but it would be very difficult to sort of introduce that discussion of, is it really meeting your goals? Are there things that, because I'm not sure they have very well-defined goals. It's like, oh, we have a website that's pretty. Sort of same thing. It's like, well, I pitched this to you, I sold it to you, I built it for you, you were happy, and so now why would I come back to you and say, well, don't be so happy anymore? There's some things we should do.
Are those clients, are they on responsive sites?
Actually, they are. I've had a couple sites recently that I've had to retrofit.
Sure.
Which doesn't work really well, but if they don't really have the money for a big redesign, it's better than nothing. And one of them, it worked out real well. They're the ones where I've gone back and made some tweaks over the years anyway. That one worked out well. But I have one where the site was probably about 5 years old, I guess. And so they said, well, we really need it responsive. And I'm like, yeah, you really do, but So I did that, and I spent quite a bit of time on it.
Yeah.
I'm pleased with the way it came out. But then I sent it to them to look at, and they're like, well, that looks good, but you know, go take a look at one of our competitors. You know, we really like their site. Could you just change ours to look like theirs? And I went and looked at it, and it's a beautiful site, and it's really contemporary, and,
Yeah.
you know, it's like it would be a total redesign to do anything like
Right.
that. And I'm like, well, first of all, I'm going to ask you to pay me for what I just did, because we're going to now have a new discussion
Yeah.
about
You-
a redesign. This was a retrofit.
Yeah, you adjust to what they have, and then at some point you got to do the redesign. And that's, if they weren't responsive, that's obviously a great leading argument. Like, hey, did you know that Google's penalizing your search engine rank because you're not mobile friendly? Let's do this as soon as possible.
But I did have a pleasant surprise the other day that I got an email from a client saying, you know, you did this really low budget site for us and that was great, but we're ready for the next thing, and we want a total redesign, and we want it to be responsive, and we want it to be contemporary. So like, that's cool.
That's a good feeling, yeah. Yeah. Anybody else?
I have used the responsive design thing as a package, and then wedge them together and things done.
Yeah.
Getting them on a Drupal 6.
Right,
You
right.
need responsive design.
You gotta do
Oh,
this
by the
big
way, we're
project.
gonna take care of this little security thing.
And let's move everything over, yeah. Yeah. Did you have?
Yeah, I was wondering, out of curiosity, do you have any idea what was the investment for the redesign of the New York Times website?
No, I'm sure it's astronomical. Which is the reason that they are said we're not doing this ever again. But they know that, hey, if they're going to hold on to their, you know, what's a shrinking audience, we better make sure we're keeping up with trends and expectations. All right, well, cool. Is everyone sticking around the rest of the day?
Yeah.
Party tonight?
Depends on the weather.
Yeah, I know.
Right back to Wisconsin.
I know. There you go. Let's go. All right, so well, feel free to talk to me anytime if you see me at the conference, or hit me up on Twitter at minneapolisdan. Thanks for coming.